Glenn, and I can't sleep. Just sitting up drinking day-old reheated decaf coffee. It's kind of tastes like dirt, but I appreciate its warmth. So, what shall we discuss? What am I feel like this looks like my shawl. Just trying to keep cozy. Yeah. I used to have these god awful nightmares as a child. Let's talk about the horrors of the night. I was terrified to go to sleep for most of my life. Until it changed at some point in the youth ministry years for me. But before that, I never had a dream that wasn't a nightmare. And I had multiple dreams every single night. I wonder if that's weird. I honestly don't know what normal is. So I wonder if that's common for people to have only nightmares. And then of course, I got into, my first novel was a horror novel. I do write horror stories. I did, my early writing years were very horror-centric. But I mean, what am I processing anyway? Like, why would a child only have nightmares? And it's not like I'd been through trauma. Like, my very earliest dreams that I remember, some of them, I mean, my very earliest dream was weird, and I may discuss that at another time. But yeah, I had this series of nightmares and recurring dreams. When I was no older than 3.5 or so. Like, I had this, in this series of dreams, it was kind of all about animals. Like, one of them I think I only had it once, but it was in this series. Like, this cat. I was riding around on a cat like it was a horse. I was very small. But I don't really remember myself. Like, it's one of those dreams where it's not one where I was like watching myself like on a movie screen. It's like I was in it. So it's all like POV. I never really saw myself. So I'm not sure if I was even human in the dream. I just remember being terrified. Like, the cat was running through this forest. And I remember being terrified that the cat would eat me, but feeling like as long as I was up on its back, it couldn't get me. But then, I started slipping. And then I was under the cat. And then it kept running, but it, bent down its head and started licking me hungrily. And then I saw these birds moving out of their trees like they were upset with me because like it was weird because it's like they were showing me the land that my house was on. Like we lived in this brand new house in Garland, and like the animals were showing me that their homes were torn down for my home or something. It was a weird dream. And then there was the wolf dream. Yeah, so this is the dream that freaked me out the most. It was a recurring dream. Like I would have this dream every other night or so for a while there. And so here's how it was. Like I was like a cowboy looking guy riding a horse behind like a covered wagon, and there's like a family in there. So it's like we're moving or something. We're moving far away. It's a long road. There are other wagons up ahead of it, right? And this little girl, and I remember it so vividly still. And this little girl in the wagon, you know, I'm like talking to the people in the wagon and stuff. It's a very relaxed little journey through kind of like a desert wilderness sort of terrain, you know, like western terrain. It's like there's forested areas around, but it's kind of open where we are. And right, so there's this little girl, we're chatting, like her mom's in there and stuff. She has this puppy, and she's holding this little puppy, and the puppy gets out of her arms, and he falls through a crack, like a gap or something in the floorboards of the wagon, and he hits the ground, and he just starts running. And the little girl's freaked out, and I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll go get him. We'll catch up. So I turn around and I go after this puppy, you know, closer to the forested areas. And the wagon's out of sight, but I know where they were going. Like, I'm still completely chill in this dream. I'm just this, like, relaxed dude on a horse. And so, dirt coffee. And so I find the puppy, right? And I get off my horse, and I go pick up the puppy. He's like peeing on a cactus. It's really weird. But then I hear this growling off to the side. And I look over, and there's a starved wolf. And I look delicious to him. And he jumps me. And the horse runs away. The puppy runs away. That's the last thing I see. In this dream, I die. And like, so the wolf just bites into me. And like, I remember every time the dream ended the same way, where I just looked at my shoulder and everything went black. And I said, uh-oh. And that was it. But I mean, right before that, I saw the puppy running away, and I remember thinking, I hope the puppy gets away. But that's it. Like when I was a little kid, I remember trying to tell my grandma about it because I had it when I was staying in Houston once, and I had it when she was in Garland once too. Like I had this dream over a period of time, and in my early years, and it was always the same. And I tried to tell her about the blacking out. I didn't know that term. I told her I looked into my shoulder and it was just black, but everything went black. So yeah, it's like I blacked out. I was dying. I died. That, and then I'd wake up and I would hear the wolf sniffing at the foot of my bed. And I would scream and call for help. And like my dad once or twice would come in and he'd just get my comforter off my bed and he'd pretend to beat the wolf away because I was terrified. But I mean, I was fully awake and I heard the sniffing at the foot of my bed. I don't know if that was, just being in a near sleep state or something, like psychosis, or there was actually something sniffing at the foot of my bed. I don't know. Like I remember something that I don't remember from that house. I'll get back to that. So, yeah, but the thing is, the cat dream, I also woke up and heard the cat sniffing at the foot of my bed. And I used to have this, like, it feels weird to say imaginary. I had this imaginary friend in that time period, and I called him Thin Wolf because he was a wolf. He wasn't the wolf that killed me in that dream. He was a different wolf, and I called him Thin Wolf because he could walk through the walls and walk through the blankets and get under the blankets with me, and he was there to protect me. I remember that from that period too. Thin Wolf. Huh. Ugh. Almost out of dirt coffee. I'm not gonna get another cup of it. Right, but I mean that was interesting. And then the Dream series, there was some other stuff in there too. But where I'd wake up with the sniffing at the foot of my bed, some animal or something. And I would, wait, what was I saying? Okay. Right, where I'd wake up and there would be sniffing at the foot of the bed. And that series of dreams ended with, like I was watching a play on a stage. Like it's very late 19th century theater-esque. But I'm the only one in the theater, pretty much. Either that or I'm just the only one I perceive. I'm trying to remember, because I remember applause. But I also remember feeling really alone. But not alone, because up on the stage were all of my dream creatures. And they were doing like the can or something. They were saying goodbye. They were taking their final bow. The wolf, the cat, the birds, the little dog. And then they turned into like they were people in costumes. You know, like mascot costumes. While they're up there dancing on the stage. And they bowed and they said goodbye. And I never had those dreams again. So weird. But I remember them all so clearly. And then I had this one nightmare when I was a little bitty kid like that. Around Halloween, I had a nightmare about jack-o'-lanterns, like that lived underground, and they like lured me into their little jack-o'-lantern cave, and they like stared at me until I turned into a jack-o'-lantern. And then all I could do was just sit there and burn from within. And it felt weird. It felt good and it felt bad. Like it was like, this is a bad thing that has happened to me, but it feels good. Like that was a weird dream, man. But it was disturbing. Like when I woke up, I was disturbed by that dream. I had a nightmare at my mom's parents' house once when I was a little kid, a little bit older, where I was outside of my grandparents' house and there were some other people there and this massive freaking polar bear showed up and was trying to kill us, and he killed them. I was up the tree. While he was eating, I climbed this tree, and then the polar bear started trying to come after me, and I was just barely out of his reach. I got high enough to get out, just barely out of his reach, and I was just terrified of falling and being eaten by the frickin' polar bear that was in my grandparents' front yard. It was really more like a parking lot. My granddad was a mechanic, and he ran his shop out of their yard, basically out of their property. So it was all pavement, but there was this tree. So, yeah, that was scary. That's the kind of thing, anytime when I knew when I fell asleep, something terrible was going to happen in my mind, and I was going to be traumatized when I awoke. One of the scariest ones I had well into my teens. It was a recurring dream. And I was at my first elementary school in Garland, Vile Elementary School. And it was a new school at the time. It's still there last I checked. I think it's a magnet school now. But it was newly built. So there was all of this like open land around it. There was a lot in Garland that wasn't developed back then. So there was almost like this tiny little, what we children would have perceived as a forest behind the playground. It's like just this wild land. And so I have good memories of that terrain, like in waking life. I could talk about all that stuff, good stuff in my childhood sometime. But yeah, but in the dream, of course, little Glenn is sleeping, so he's having a nightmare about this paradise behind, like, the playground was a paradise in that school, and it was nothing but good associations for me. And I had this recurring nightmare that I ran after a ball into this field, like this overgrown area with trees, like the forest, to 6-year-olds. And I heard growling in the grass. The tall grass, like really tall overgrown grass. And I was like, oh, there's something murderous in there. So I'm going to run back to the proper playground out of here, back to the school and to safety. And so I ran, and it was one of those awful dreams where your feet are just way too heavy and you're running with all your strength, but you can barely lift your foot and put it down in front of you and do it again. Like, I was running in slow motion, but the big dog out in the field was not. And so he jumps me, and it's this solid white Doberman pinscher with red eyes. I called him the white dog. And his teeth, oh my gosh, like he's just trying to tear into my throat. But I grab him on his throat, and I'm like I'm pushing him away from me so he can't bite me, and I'm squeezing with all of my might. And then he finally just disappears. And I'm horrified because at that moment I realized not only was the white dog trying to kill me and a scary monster, but the white dog was also a ghost. That terrified me as a child. That was my most terrifying dream. And I would have it night after night. And that one started maybe 2nd grade. And I had it well into, like, I was 13 or 14 the last time I had a nightmare about the white dog. And that one was different. It wasn't the same dream. It was just the dog showing me he was there. But you know, when I think about it, those white dog dreams coincided with some tumultuous times in my life where I was going through some, various traumatic childhood events. Like moving from Garland to Houston. The first time I had that dream, it was in my grandparents' house, the same house where I had the dream about the polar bear. I remember standing in the crib as a really little kid in that house and playing with the stuffed rabbits and stuff. This pink rabbit that was ratty. And I remember figuring out how to get over the top of that thing and get out. Anyway, that's a tangent. Talking about nightmares. But that's what's weird. Like I'm in a comfortable, safe environment when I have two of the worst nightmares that I've ever had. That's really weird. Like I'm in a safe place physically, but emotionally I don't think I was. Because that's around the time we moved from Garland to Houston. And then 2 years later we moved from Houston to Dallas. And that was even more traumatic. But, because moving to Houston was mostly a positive experience for me, except for grieving the friends I'd left behind. But there were new friends in Houston. Like, I was a very happy child in Houston. I was a very happy child in Garland. Dallas, things got tricky. Like, I was happy at home. I was happy in the neighborhood I lived in. I had friends in the neighborhood. I was miserable in school. So, I mean, just that school was nightmare fuel in itself. So I had, oh man, I started having more variety in my nightmares, when I got older. It was a brand new narrative every night, and it was always terrible. Just people or ghosts or monsters trying to hurt me. So yeah, I was scared to go to sleep for years. 'Cause then when I became an adult, a lot of my nightmares became sexual. It's like, it's never someone pleasant. It's always like just some nightmare scenario of like, oh, but you have the head of a fly, okay. It's just, ugh. I was not blessed with the pleasant sex dreams most adolescents reminisce about. I mean, mine were nightmares. But it makes sense. Sex was a nightmare at the time. Like, I had zero guidance. So, it was freaky. It was freaky. Because, it's like zero guidance to navigating sexuality other than don't. Don't have sex. And, oh, here, listen to the preacher. Don't have sex, or God will hate you and you will go to hell. That's the extent of my guidance. So maybe that's why my nightmares became about sex, because it was like this magical horror in itself. It's like, hell, I guess I'm going to hell now. I can't tell anybody I did this. They'll throw me into the fires of eternal damnation on the spot. My mother probably would have. Just thrown me into the fireplace. You've made Jesus very angry. I mean, she wouldn't go that far. I'm just saying. She was like one of the loudest, just don't or God will hate you people in my life. So that might explain. I still have sexual nightmares from time to time. I don't know why, and I don't know where they come from. And often it's just the nightmare is no more horrible than it's just someone I'm not into in real life, like someone I would never look at sexually, like a friend or something, or an enemy, like some celebrity or politician I despise. It's never pleasant. It's always something where I wake up and I literally want to vomit. Because the nightmare is that in the dream I'm into it. Always. And then I wake up and I'm like, whoa, that's disgusting. That's repellent to me. I mean, it's never anything like epically perverse. It's just I have a nightmare that I'm into someone I'm not into. But then sometimes they're actual monsters and stuff. Oh, I'm making strange sounds. Oh, it's that gutter coffee, which I keep drinking. But yeah, I value nightmares. Like, I got to the point where I stopped fearing them and just kind of started embracing them. And maybe like when I became a lucid dreamer, when I figured out that trick, fear of nightmares before I go to sleep kind of lost its power. Mostly, when I'm in the midst of an actual trauma, like when my mom died a couple years ago, it's like I had flashbacks. I was terrified to close my eyes. I'd be back in that room. And then if I slept, I'd be reliving that experience of watching my mom die. Oh. Yeah, so I mean, there I went through another period of being afraid to go to sleep. But I got through that. Why does the back of my leg itch? Okay. It's probably just fleas. Yeah, anyway. So, yeah, when I started lucid dreaming, it kind of took the power away from nightmares because I knew that I could be in control. Like, I had this one night, I was in the midst of this nightmare after I'd figured out lucid dreaming. And, like, I was in, like, this cornfield, like, you know, just typical horror movie. And there were werewolves everywhere. And people were running and screaming and getting eaten by werewolves. And I was running to this house. And then I realized, wait a minute. There's no such thing as werewolves. And so I did the lucid dreaming test. Pinched my nose. Try to breathe in. If you can't, you're awake. And those are really werewolves. If you can breathe in through your pinched off nose, then you know you're asleep. So, we're doing a Conversations in Sunglasses all about lucid dreaming. So I'm going to save the rest of that story. I don't know which video will go up first between this one and that one, so I may have already told you this story from your point of view. But yeah, so I mean, the point is, when I figured out it was a dream, I wasn't scared of the werewolves anymore. I just was like, yeah, okay, all that's going on, screaming, getting chased by werewolves. They can't touch me. This is my world. And so, yeah, I haven't been afraid of nightmares. I'm more just interested in them. And I do have pleasant dreams now. Since the youth ministry years. I still have nightmares, but not every dream I have is a nightmare anymore. But I remember being a little kid and being resigned to a life of nightmares. Because I'd never had any other kind of dream. It's really weird. But yeah, that wolf one. That one messed me up. It's one of those things. It just makes you wonder. Like, was I remembering a death from a previous life? Was Thin Wolf imaginary? Or was I describing a ghost when I said he was thin because he could pass through walls? But he was there to protect me, and he told me that. Like, that was an interesting thing that I think back on. Oh, that's what I was going to get back to. That I remember something that I don't remember from that house in Garland. Like, I remember I was alone playing in my room. Playing with my toys. And I went to the closet. Like, I'm getting shook right now just even replaying this in my mind. But I looked in the closet and I don't remember what I saw. So I remember going to the closet, and then it's like there's this blank space. And I remember my reaction. I remember the sheer terror. Like, I'm getting jumpy right now. That's how terrifying this was. Like, I don't know what terrified me. I do remember how I felt. And that I was screaming so hard that I couldn't make a sound. That's how terrified I was. And this wasn't a dream. This was something that happened. And I remember, I don't remember how I got to my mom, but I remember her holding me and me telling her that I was so scared that I couldn't scream. Like, I just fell on the floor screaming in terror. Whatever it was. But I don't remember what it was. Oh, I'm out of dirt coffee. Anyway. It's 1:13. Man. It's hard to sleep. But yeah, now, you know, I find nightmares to be cathartic. Most of the time. Not the sex nightmares. Those are not cathartic. Those are just disturbing, and I'm afraid to analyze them. But I mean, normally, in a dream, sex isn't sex. Death isn't death. Everything is a symbol or a metaphor. And you know, you can look at life like that too. Everything is a symbol or a metaphor for something else. Like our stories, we're surrounded by symbolism in these stories that we live. We're surrounded by characters who represent things, different things. Life is but a dream. And that's not to diminish it. That's just you know, everything's a dream. Everything's imaginary. And everything's real. It's like I'm sitting on this couch, but it's still like not real. Like my experience of it is just something that's constructed in my brain based on messages it's getting from um, my nerve endings and such. So in a way I'm generating these images in my brain. I'm imagining this based on information that's being suggested to me through nerve endings to my brain. Yeah, it's like, and the, just visuals, it's the same thing. It's something being processed, light bouncing off of objects, and it goes through your eyes, and your brain processes that data and turns it into an image. So it's all imagined, but it's all real. So, yeah, nightmares. I've had some that are just so horrible. I just can't, man. But, like, I've woken up screaming. As a child, mostly as a child, I woke up screaming so many times. But it got worse, like when there were worse things actually happening in my waking world, my nightmares would intensify. So it makes sense, it's all just processing information. Our dreams are processing information that we aren't processing consciously, that, our subconscious deems necessary to process. So you're not looking at this the way that you need to be. You need to be sitting with this feeling. Here it is in abundance, in nightmare form. Yeah, it's like you need to be fighting something. Choke this monster until he vanishes. I don't know. Dreams are good even when they're nightmares. And life is the same. We gain a lot from our from adversity. We gain a lot from our traumas. We grow a lot. We are defined in many cases by how we survive our traumas, how we evolve, how we adapt and don't die. So, that's why we have nightmares. I think we grow. We remember nightmares. We grow from nightmares. Like we face something we don't want to face, and that can only make you stronger. So, nightmares are good. And I'm jittery now. I'm like little kid scared right now of my own imagination. That's awesome because I haven't felt that in so long. But talking about those really early childhood nightmares brought all those feelings straight up to the surface just like they used to be. And talking about that closet incident, man, I've got little kid fear. It's the way I used to feel watching scary movies. Now movies don't scare me. I've seen too much in the world. I've seen too much reality to be afraid of horror movies. So it's cool because that was a particular kind of feeling. That was a, it's an intense emotion that I'd forgotten about, really. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. I don't feel that flavor of intense fear anymore. Like fear of the imagination. Like it has its own taste, I guess. Like I think fear of something that's in your imagination is what I'm saying is it feels very distinctly different than fear of something you know is real. It's like more icy. It's more stabby and tingly and even fun. Like, it's just got its own tint to it. But it is fear. It's like it's real fear. I love that if I can't sleep, I just turn on the camera and go literally insane in front of it and then post it to the internet. It's like, here, look what I did last night. Well, but I love having this little niche, these 16 subscribers at the time of this recording. Like, I love that. It just makes it so much more beautiful. This is like, I'm preserving myself in amber is the thing that, to me personally, makes this enjoyable to do. Like, I'm doing it to generate, like, just interest in me and my books, pretty much, was my first motivation. That's like the business motivation of doing this. But I don't care about things like that, really. I'm just doing them because I know I'm supposed to market things. So, like, the real reason I enjoy doing this is because I'm trapping myself in amber for future cyber archaeologists in centuries to come who are going to look back at things to see how we lived and how we thought and what we did and who we were. And not just for them, but for the people I know and love here if I leave before them, if I exit the stage before them. I want them to still have me here. Like, if you need to hear my voice while taking in my wisdom and my foolishness, here I am on YouTube. You can always watch these videos and find me. If you want to delve deep into my wisdom and my foolishness, you've got all my books. I'm in there. I am speaking to you from in my books. Centuries from now, or, any time today while I'm still alive, I'm speaking to you from my books. That's so cool. But yeah, the video, it's just, that makes it more enjoyable for me because it's kind of like my legacy. It's like I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. I'm trying to be everything I am on these videos because that's what I want to leave for people when I exit the stage. I don't want to abandon people. It's kind of like a Jedi holocron in the old school Star Wars stuff, where the Jedi just records their teachings in holographic form in this little holocron. That's kind of what I'm doing. But it's, way more silly and fun. I don't even know why I was talking about that. I was talking about nightmares. Oh, but yeah, so I don't genuinely care about, subscriptions and, I value them. I'm really grateful when someone subscribes to my videos and when people watch it. That's what I'm saying. The few subscribers I have are more precious because of how few they are. The few viewers I have right now, same thing. It's just fun, It's not like on a giant stage. It could be. 1,000,000 people could tune in and watch this video. But if 20 people are watching it, if 12 people are watching it, that's just amazing. I'm just really happy to have a little tiny group of people who want to sit up with me and listen to what I ramble on about. Because, as I have said before, celebrity is a fart in the wind. Yeah, celebrity is a fart in the wind, and religion is a game of darts in the dark. Yeah, another topic for another time. I think I shall leave you with that bit of wisdom or foolishness. Subscribe below, give me a like if you are so kind and so inclined. Thanks for sitting up with me.